There's an old saying, comparison is the thief of joy, but it's much worse than that. Comparison doesn't just steal your happiness, it distorts your perception, poisons your progress, and binds you in chains of resentment. We live in an age of constant exposure, where you can compare yourself to anyone at any time. Social media parades the best moments of others before your eyes, highlighting what you lack, what you haven't done, and where you fall short. But let me tell you something, that comparison is a trap, a dangerous, insidious trap, and you have to escape it. Every person is a unique individual, carrying a past, a personality, and a set of challenges that you cannot see. You don't know their struggles. You don't know what it cost them to achieve what they have. And more importantly, you don't know if what they have is even worth having. Imagine two individuals, one who grew up in a stable, wealthy home and another who had to fight tooth and nail just to make it through school. The first person might become a successful entrepreneur by their late 20s, while the second might just be getting their first decent job at the same age. If the second person compares themselves to the first, they may feel like a failure. But is that fair? No, because their struggles, their foundations, and their resources were entirely different. What seems like a delay in one person's journey could actually be an incredible triumph given their starting point. This is why comparison is so dangerous, because it disregards the unseen battles people fight every day. When you compare yourself to someone else, you assume that their success somehow diminishes yours. But life does not operate on a fixed scale where one person's progress means another's failure. The person you envy may have sacrificed things you are not willing to sacrifice. Perhaps they gave up their personal life, health, or relationships to achieve what they have. Would you truly be willing to pay the same price? The reality is you are only seeing a fragment of their story, the highlight reel rather than the behind-the-scenes struggle. Consider an artist who spends years refining their craft. They start with crude, awkward drawings, struggling to capture what they see in their mind. Then one day they stumble upon the work of a celebrated master, a painter whose skill appears almost otherworldly. The young artist is filled with despair. I'll never be that good, they think. I'll never create something that beautiful. But what they fail to recognize is the thousands of hours the master put in, years of failures, discarded canvases, and relentless practice. The young artist comparison is not only unfair, but also destructive. Instead of using the master's work as inspiration, they use it as a weapon against themselves. The same applies to all areas of life. A person struggling to get in shape may feel demoralized when they see someone with a sculpted physique. They may not realize that the fit individual once struggled too, overcoming their own insecurities and making countless sacrifices to reach that point. Without understanding the full journey, comparison is meaningless and misleading. The only valid measure of success is your own improvement. The real question isn't whether you are as good as someone else, it's whether you are better than you were yesterday. Progress is personal. It's based on your experiences, your choices, and your potential. If you are constantly striving to improve upon your past self, then you are on the right path. That's the only comparison that holds any real value. Life is not a single game with one scoreboard. Everyone is playing on a different field, with different rules and obstacles. Your journey isn't meant to look like theirs. If you measure yourself against someone else's ruler, you'll always come up short because it was never made to measure you in the first place. Think about a student struggling with mathematics. They look at a classmate who effortlessly solves complex equations and feel discouraged. What they don't realize is that this classmate has been tutored for years, has a natural aptitude for numbers, or simply enjoys problem solving more. Meanwhile, the struggling student might excel in creativity or interpersonal skills, areas where the math prodigy might struggle. The comparison is unfair because it assumes both are starting from the same place and playing by the same rules, which they are not. The truth is, each of us has unique circumstances that shape our paths. Some people have access to better resources, mentors, or life situations that make success easier in a particular domain. Others must work twice as hard for the same results. This isn't an excuse to give up, but rather a reason to stop measuring yourself against someone who plays a different game entirely. Instead, measure progress within the reality of your own playing field. Another example, a person training for their first marathon might compare themselves to a seasoned runner who has completed dozens of races. The beginner struggles with endurance while the veteran breezes past them. If they focus solely on this unfair comparison, they'll likely feel inadequate and defeated. But what if they shift the focus to their personal progress, running a little farther each week, building stamina, improving form? Suddenly the playing field changes. The only competition is with their past self. And real growth happens when they recognize that their path is uniquely their own. The moment you realize that life isn't a standardized competition, you free yourself from the burden of comparison. The only fair way to measure success is by evaluating how far you've come relative to where you started, not where someone else stands. The key is to embrace your own playing field and move forward on your terms, rather than being distracted by someone else's race. The only valid comparison you should make is with your past self. Every day presents an opportunity for growth, however small. If you measure your progress against who you were yesterday, you'll always find motivation to improve. Think about a writer working on their first book. At first, their sentences are clumsy, their ideas unstructured, but over time, with consistent effort, they refine their craft. If they compare themselves to best-selling authors, they might feel hopeless. However, if they compare today's writing to what they wrote last year, they'll see undeniable progress. That's the only comparison that matters: growth in relation to your former self. Life is not a race against others, it's a process of refining who you are. Small incremental improvements accumulate over time and lead to transformation. By focusing on your personal evolution rather than someone else's achievements, you build a meaningful and fulfilling path forward. When you compare yourself to others, you set yourself up for bitterness. You begin to resent their success, as if life is a zero-sum game where their gain is your loss. But that's not true. Their success does not diminish you. Your resentment, however, will. It will make you weaker, angrier, and blind to your own potential. The energy spent resenting someone else's success could have been directed toward your own growth. Imagine a musician who constantly compares themselves to a more accomplished artist. Instead of practicing and improving, they grow bitter, dismissing the other's success as luck or privilege. Over time, this resentment festers, preventing them from reaching their own potential. If they had focused on their own progress, they could have achieved greatness on their own terms. You have a duty to cultivate your strengths, develop your abilities, and pursue your goals with dedication. No one else is responsible for unlocking your potential. Only you are. If you waste time fixating on others, you forfeit the chance to build something meaningful in your own life. True fulfillment comes from embracing responsibility and striving toward personal excellence. The only meaningful comparison is with who you were yesterday. Aim to improve yourself bit by bit, day by day. Stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own potential. That is the path to real achievement. That is the path to a life worth living.